Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, as always, Objectively Dan, doing the show from my apartment once again, but joining me, as someone does every week on this show, because we get a special guest every single Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time, Jenna H, who you probably don't know.
Hey,
Jenna, because Jenna is a personal friend of mine that we used to go way back to middle school with, and is also the thumbnail artist for this show. So if you ever wonder, hey, who's making all that crazy, awesome art? Well, this is her.
that's me.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought Jenna on was, one, it's cool to see who does the art and stuff, but Jenna used to know me when I was a Christian, and Jenna was also a Christian at that time too. And now we're both atheists. And we kind of both grew up in a similar religious environment out in Waco, Texas. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of talk about what that's like, because I do get asked, like, what's it like growing up in Waco? You know, what people thought of me when I was a Christian after I changed, and kind of how you got roped in with Truth Wanted, Jenna. So I wanted to kind of start with
So
I just want to kind of start with, what's your religious background? You know, how did you go from Christian to atheist? Like, let's just start from there.
Well, I mean, like most people, I was just born to well, actually, originally my family was Catholic, but then they turned Protestant. So by the time I was it was Protestant.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually stuck to Nazarene, and so that's where I was. And then, eventually we moved to Waco, and I don't know. That's how it started.
Right. And so we went to, I would say, I mean, what would you say, Jenna? I'd say the vast majority of our school populace was pretty devoutly Christian, like even more so than you might see in a typical
Baptist.
American school. Yeah, we had a lot of Baptists where we grew up. And so by the time I was in high school, I went to a Baptist church. But I'd say that the most prominent, like, after school activity for most kids at our school, like, was youth group, right? Like, it more so than anything else.
Like the youth group. There was the big youth group to be in.
Yeah, we
weren't in it.
No, yeah. So there was this one big youth group that was like almost a clique at our school, which I thought was pretty funny looking back in retrospect. But like, I guess I kind of wanted to frame this because, like, there's a lot of people that talk about how some people just stay the way that they are and they don't change. And Jenna, I would have never thought that you or I would have ever changed our particular religious beliefs. To looking back, that's crazy. And just considering everybody that we knew, and the way that we grew up. And so, like, how did you start to lose that religious identity? What was that process like for you?
I think always something that really stressed me out about religion was I think that in some way, in order to be religious, you have to have a bit of a competitive streak in you, which is something I don't really have. So whenever I would get told from, like, pastors and preachers, like, oh, well, you're not doing enough. You need to give more money. You need to pray more. You need to be, like, more Christian, and you're never good enough, and you always have to be more. I was like, I'm getting really stressed out by this. And I, like, always felt so guilty because I was like, I'm not praying enough. I'm not doing all this shit that they tell me to do. And then, like, my family, especially my dad, was also very, very pressuring. Like, if I liked anything, it would be like, well, why aren't you liking God that much? Like, I would draw, like, stupid little pictures, and my dad would be like, well, how does this relate to God? And I remember having to, like, excuse why I liked things by relating them to God. Like, whenever I talked about Zelda, he's like, well, Link breaks the pots the way that Jesus breaks the pots or some shit. And then I was like, I had to, like, relate it back. And then I liked Evanescence a lot. And luckily, people think she's Christian. So that was, like, an easy pass.
Yeah.
And then I liked, whenever I liked wolves, because I went through a wolf phase, I remember drawing a picture of a wolf while I was in church, and it said on it, like, save the wolves. And my dad was like, why don't you worry about saving your own soul? And like, so I couldn't even like anything. And I just got really, really tired of it by the time I was able to think more independently.
Yeah. And when would you say that was?
But I didn't,
because I think it was around the same time for both of us, right? Around college.
Yeah, definitely when I think really what jump-started everything was my parents getting divorced, because with my dad out of the picture, he also ruined the relationship that we had with the church that we went to. So it was really awkward together. So a lot of times we just didn't go. And then my wife, who I met in that church, she would still go and I would go with her, but it was just kind of different because then she also stopped going because I wouldn't go. And then in general, like once I moved out, we just stopped going altogether. And I was done at that point. I didn't really want to, but my wife was still really into it. So I was still like praying and doing that shit for her. But then I think whenever she started getting, she's very smart. She reads a lot. And so I think when she started her deconversion is when I was officially comfortable actually labeling myself as atheist.
Yeah.
Because I would still try.
I think that's funny though.
At work, but I was like,
that's so funny that you got married to a woman first before you lost your religious beliefs. I don't know. Like that's
no, we became atheists a month or two before our wedding.
Okay. So,
isn't that funny?
Yeah. So like that's not uncommon though. And to me, just the way that I grew up and the way that I understood sexuality as a Christian, that was like, you just straight up just could not be gay and be Christian. Like that wasn't even a construct that existed. But like when you find someone you love, right, and you still have this God belief, like I think people just kind of make it work. And I think that's true for y'all's story at least. But yeah, and something else I wanted to touch on, you talked about this idea of competitiveness. And I think that's super true from the way that we grow up. I don't know if that just stems from a Baptist culture specifically, but there was definitely this idea amongst a lot of the people that I knew growing up. Like it's almost like when people talk about, wanted to show how holy they are. They wanted to show how Christian they were. They would like give the great Christian answers in class or something. I don't know. Or they would talk about some specific Bible verse. They like there was this pressure to conform to this idea of being a good Christian. And I think I gotta assume that's weird for a lot of people who didn't grow up in an environment like that. But like that was kind of the reality of where we were, right?
Yeah, and it was funny too because like we were saying earlier, it was like all the cool kids. Of course, I was not cool. Especially I wasn't cool because I showed a lot of the like symptoms of being a lesbian, so I couldn't fit in with them. And they were like, and it was the same thing. Like I went to all these church camps because my wife was homeschooled, so she went to a lot of church camps, and I would always go with her because she would always ask me because she couldn't get along with anyone because she was also like had lesbian symptoms and I had lesbian symptoms. And it was always such an uncomfortable place to be because I always knew like, I didn't know that it was because I was a lesbian. I was like, I'm too dykey, only that wouldn't be the word I used. And like, I just don't fit in with these people. And that was just like what we were always surrounded with.
Yeah.
And always proving how much better they were than everyone else. And something that I couldn't compete in because I couldn't pretend to be like that. And so it was just like awkward watching it. And then seeing these people also try and prove themselves to their pastors all the time. And it's gross because it's like, it's one man, it's one dude. And our pastor was also like an asshole. So like seeing all these people just like grovel at his feet, it's just gross and I hate it.
Yeah. So there's definitely, and this is something I try to bring up with people when talking about Christianity, at least in this country, is because I think a lot of people who talk about these issues make the mistake of strictly treating Christianity as an ideology or a set of propositions by which someone believes in. And that's just, it's really not the case for a lot of people. That may be how we see it as secular people, since we want to kind of dissect it, right? But like for the average Christian, I think part of it is an identity thing. It's like how you fit into your group, how you fit in and navigate your social world. And you talked about like you presented as lesbian and like you got judgment for that. And I definitely remember seeing that, not just with you, but with other people who went to our school and kids who came out at the time. And this was like the early 2010s. So like that was still kind of a new thing. I like newer for Waco. Yeah, newer for Waco, I should say. And like I remember people talking so much shit about some of the kids that came out at our school. And it was always, you know, only a handful of kids ever did. But you could see that judgment there, and you could see that pressure to conform, right?
Every time I knew someone was gay, of course I was homophobic because what choice did I have? But I was always so attracted to the gay people. Like I was always like, please let me be your friend. You got something going on and I'm about it. And so I would always be friends with these people, but then I would bully them. But I kind of bullied all my friends because I'm emotionally stunted or something. I always describe our friendship, how it started between the two of us, as like we bullied each other. And like we just couldn't stop. We had so much fun bullying each other that we became really good friends.
Yeah, I think we were kind of, looking back, it's almost as if, you know, we didn't always feel like we fit in with a lot of people. We were kind of, I don't want to say like a Breakfast Club situation, because I don't think it was that dramatic, but it was, you know, that's middle of the pack, I think. I don't know if we particularly stood out, but you know, that's high school, right? That's people's experiences, you know, growing up. I think it's interesting to see. I would be very curious to see what other people who grew up alongside us think about issues now in 2020 than they did back then. Because I know a lot of them, you know, and other people obviously get that experience too, but also our generations in particular, growing up with social media, I feel like we also have a different lens to the world than previous generations in looking at a lot of, especially the social issues we see now. So I don't know if most people that are our age are as hardcore in their Christianity as before. I'm sure some of them are, but maybe, you know, maybe there's some flexibility there. I've had different conversations. I mean, obviously we changed, right? Like, and I didn't think we would. So, you know, I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, rather, in seeing other people change in you know, those kinds of circumstances. So let's talk about this. So you found we were friends for a long time. We were friends through high school. Then we kind of went to college, and then we kind of stopped talking. We went to different colleges, you know, whatever. How did you find me again? And tell that story, because that's fun.
Oh, so when my wife was deconverting, and of course I was deconverting with her because I can't read, and she reads to me, so she always tells me everything. So she was telling me all about these atheists that she was getting into. She was showing me videos, and I was watching them with her because I thought they were so cool and so interesting and so smart. And then she's like, "Oh, you should need to watch this guy, Cosmic Skeptic. Cosmic Skeptic does a great job. He's so well read and like cool." And so we were like getting really into him. We were watching a whole bunch of his videos, and then up pops you on his couch.
Yeah, well, actually, it was genetically modified skeptic, not Cosmic Skeptic.
Oh yeah. My bad.
Yeah.
I know the difference,
but yeah, I was in one of his
genetically modified skeptic.
Yeah, I was in one of his videos, and then you
Drew.
Yeah, you Facebook messaged me out of the blue asking me if that was me.
Yeah.
And I said yeah. And then like seeing me in some atheist video, right? Kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was so weird.
Yeah, and then we
it was funny because Bella's like, I was like, that's Daniel. She's like, Daniel, the guy that you always fought with? And I was like, yes, him. And she said that she remembers us being in church, in youth group, me talking about us fighting.
Yeah.
And like, she's like, why are you friends with him? I was like, because it's so much fun.
Yeah. Well,
and then even looking back at the message before I messaged you about Drew is us fighting.
Yeah, probably. And so that's kind of fun. Like, and you're not the only person I've talked to, because my story is pretty public, like I have the privilege of being able to share what I was like when I was Christian, the kind of before and after. And so because of that, there have been other people that I've known in kind of my Christian life that have kind of found it that I never explicitly told. And so like, you're not the only one with that, but eventually, we started talking more, and then I got you to collaborate by making thumbnails on Truth Wanted. And now,
which was so cool. It was such a great opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that we could make that happen. And I just think this story is interesting because like people feel like people keep saying that people don't change, like, and like people really do. Like, it's just like, I don't know, some of the most conservative people I knew growing up are now super liberal. And sometimes vice versa too. Sometimes people who are not are more left leaning have become, and changed their ideas. And so like people are just way more malleable than you might think. And like, I don't know. I encourage people who haven't talked to some people they used to know just to see what they're like on these kinds of issues, because you never know what you can learn from this kind of stuff.
And then of course too, like, I mean, I love looking at people on Facebook and creeping and whatever, but like the stuff they post is not reflective of their opinions on things. So you can even if you see them say that, like, you still have to hold that with a grain of salt, because like, you don't know exactly what they think. And like, I always give a lot of, I try to be very understanding of people who believe things that I don't like, because I personally have gone through so much change myself that I always give people that benefit of the doubt. Like, I know everyone is capable of change. So I don't know. And I think it's a happier live, just trying to do your best to understand that everyone is trying to do the right thing. And even if what they're doing is not the right thing objectively, that is what they think is the right thing, Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Some people are just mean, but.
Well, there's different value systems. I think our values changed over time, really. I think that was a big part of it, too. And like, because we grew up with like small town values. Like, Waco is not a small town by a technical definition, right? But it has a small town mindset. Yeah, it's getting bigger, but like I do separate, population size doesn't necessarily dictate the culture that you might get. And I think Waco in particular is kind of an epitome of that. So anyway, that's what it's like growing up in Waco. And also the David Koresh stuff, I think people ask us all the time, like that. Every Wacoan will tell you it didn't actually happen in Waco. It happened like 30 minutes outside of Waco.
Mount Carmel.
Yeah, not in the city limits, but it's always marketed that way. So anyway, we actually have a whole bunch of calls in our call queue. So I want to go ahead and just
jump straight to calls.
You ready?
I'm so nervous.